Good morning. This is Mr. Harold coming to you today, actually, to tell you a little bit about the college application essay. Sometimes the instructions will work for you, but sometimes you need a little bit more, and that's why you're here. Here's a couple examples of what not to do in the college application essay. If you're going to say you were in the honor roll, please be sure that you spell it correctly. Otherwise, people can get scared. If you're going to say that you serve people, especially with the homeless, be sure that you're getting your prepositions in there. Otherwise, you'll look deadly. And finally, if you were inducted into the National Honor Society, remember there's a difference between being inducted and abducted, though the candles do make it look a little bit creepy. In other words, if you're going to talk about yourself, you have to be precise. That's what we're here to talk about today. Now, over the next couple of days, you're going to be writing a college application essay. Well, what is that going to look like? First, just like any paper, you're going to have your intro and conclusion. You're going to have a thesis or a focus statement. Now, you're not making a literary argument this time. You're making an argument about you. What is that argument going to be? That's what you have to decide based on the prompt that you choose. I'm going to ask that you have at least 2 body paragraphs. And again, this can be done in any way you want depending on the type of thesis that you choose, but you need to make sure that it's organized in some way. And about 2 pages. In fact, you don't want to go more than 3 pages. If you're talking about yourself that much, frankly, none of you are that interesting. You need to pare it down a little bit. And the last thing, this might be a good news for some of you, first person language is okay. After 4 years of being told you can never use it, now is finally the time. Okay, so what are the possible prompts? Number 1, identify a life-changing experience for you. You might be thinking, I don't have a life-changing experience, but perhaps you do. Is there a time that you tried a club or activity for the first time and you really enjoyed it and went with it? Is there a time that you went on a trip and it really just changed the way you thought about the world? It doesn't have to be that the world changed. It just has to be that you changed. My advice here also is try to avoid deaths of grandparents. I see those a lot, and a lot of times they simply come off as corny. Now, it might be true for you, but usually there's a more positive spin on it. So you want to be thinking of positive, life-changing experiences. A quote, you could use that. If you have a quote that has meaning for you, you could use it to explain how it talks about your life. What I get on this sometimes is people choose a quote that they looked up randomly on the internet. If it's not a quote that you've thought about before this, you probably don't want to choose this prompt. And then finally, just tell us who you are. Tell us what you do. Give us something that gives us some insight. Now, you don't have to use these prompts. If you have a college that you know you're going to, you can feel free to use one of those, but these are my examples. I do ask that if you choose to use another prompt, please show it to me. So when you go to draft, here's a few things you want to keep in mind. Try to avoid those cliche expressions. Hello, my name is, or permit me to discuss this. You don't need to restate these things. You just want to get right to the main point and move on. The typical intros, they sound great when you're submitting a paper, but for a college application essay, you really just want to get to the point. Some other things you want to think about. Here are a whole bunch of options that you can use when you're doing an introduction. A quote, a question, an observation, somebody else's theory. Maybe you're confessing something, though please don't confess anything too terrible or it's going to hurt your chances. These are all things that you want to think about. Basically, you need to be true to yourself, but don't come off as a typical boring student. Finally, at the end, when we write a literary paper, the point is to reach a conclusion, to say what you've proven. You're not really proving anything here. You're just sort of talking about yourself. So when you reach the end of your essay, you're simply going to end the story. You're going to say, that's a little bit about me. I'd love to join your university. Or that's a little bit about me. I hope it gives you a better understanding of me. But you're not leading towards some grand conclusion. So you just want to begin in an interesting way and end in an interesting way. Finally, you don't want to be using words like finally. You don't want to be asking their permission. You don't want to sum up. And please don't end with a quote. It's pretty cliche. My final bit of advice on college application essays, you're not going to have these read by professors. These are going to be read by 22-year-olds who are working in the admissions department for $7.25 an hour. Basically what they do is they throw out the bad ones, they put the good ones in a pile, and the rest of them just kind of stay in the mediocre section. I have no doubt all of you can stay in the mediocre section, but the trick is, how are you going to stand out? How are you going to make this 22-year-old who's working in admissions, who really hates his job, make him want to put you in the winner pile? Something to think about. Take a look at the instructions. Remember, you do need to do some form of pre-writing, some form of drafting. The rest is up to you. Well, that's all for now. Thanks for stopping by. Good luck, and ask me if you have any questions.